Hi, I'm Justin Moorman.
And I'm Katie Thornton, and this is the Re-Education of Schools podcast,
where we have open, honest conversations about how to better understand social emotional learning, trauma-informed care, the whys behind student behavior, and how to help kids navigate it all as they go through school and life. All right, welcome back to our next episode, Time Poverty. Before we get started, if you've enjoyed listening to the podcast, we'd really appreciate it for you if you could give us a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. It helps other people find this content and helps us keep the conversation going, and we just appreciate it. So if you've enjoyed it, please go ahead and do that, and that'd be great. So time poverty.
Sounds real chipper.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Because it sounds like a real downer. This is your chance to get out now if you don't want to hear about it. You just listen to it anyway. You don't have to sit there. Just walk away from the phone and let it play out. No, time poverty. I thought this was kind of interesting, and read an article about it a little bit ago and thought it actually, in a different way, can apply to us as teachers, like in a classroom.
100%.
And so I thought it would be interesting for us to talk about that concept. So really, in a time in education when we feel like our day is kind of mandated and scripted more than ever, the biggest struggle, or one of the biggest struggles we hear about from different educators and from people that we talk to, is that there's no time, right? There's just not enough time in the day. And this really has led us to where we are talking in this episode.
Yeah. It's the number one issue that we're seeing in classrooms, that we hear that over and over again.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting.
Yeah. All right. So let's kind of jump in. What is time poverty for people that have never heard it? And maybe how does it relate to us in education?
All right. I guess they're defining time poverty as the feeling of not having enough time for non-essential activities like leisure, hobbies, self-care, due to chronic imbalance between what a person needs to do and the time they have available. And I think in education right now, teachers are finding it difficult for doing all the things all the time.
Yeah.
And we're not really having a difficult time to do the things that improve mental health, regulation, critical thinking, long-term learning outcomes, just through day-to-day curriculum mandates. Things that are being compromised are getting kids outdoors, classroom breaks, and independent time, community building, restorative classroom practices, STEAM and STEM projects, project-based learning, and extensions that lead to critical thinking are all kind of being squeezed out because we're having mandated curriculum initiatives.
Yeah. And listen, this isn't a knock. We'll say this on the front end. It's not necessarily a knock on the, curriculum either. I mean, we understand that there also has to be like good, solid curriculum that we're using. People have to use it with fidelity and follow things. We get that as well. It's just weird to try to find, in education, I think it's weird to try to find a balance, right?
I think that's our current challenge right now. How do we continue to weave in all the other things without letting the other thing dominate? And we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
Yeah. Okay. So, I really saw basically the same thing as we talked about, or as I looked up and kind of researched the time poverty idea more, that discretionary time isn't really available because we're so full of the actual obligations, whether it's, work, household chores, caregiving, commuting, all those kind of things. And that's like the idea in general of time poverty, is that we're kind of overly scheduled to the point that, hey, we could have all the other necessities that we need in life to really live a healthy, fulfilled life. And yet you could be basically time poor. Mm-hmm. And then really you step back and you're like, what kind of life is that? Like in the end. So that idea of how it works into education, really just exactly what you said. It's no different. Teachers have very little discretionary time available to do what they choose to do as far as instruction goes. And I think that's a big deal.
And I think that's been a big shift. We've been doing this for 20 years. And I would say, as somebody that started off as a kindergarten teacher or ran my own autism unit or taught first grade, I had a lot of time to decide what my morning meeting, how I started my community, how I planned experiential things for kids. We did a lot of projects, and I had a lot which was good for me because I had a lot of autonomy and I was able to weave in standards and that kind of stuff. But I think there's some pros to how we've moved the direction of more standardized curriculum, because now we know all kids are getting what they need. You're not depending on the one rock star teacher to deliver it. And but what a shift from my first 10 years teaching to my second half of my teaching with education's changed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that's a shift for people that have been veteran educators. I think the new educators aren't going to know the difference.
Sure, it's just what it is.
It's just what it is. But for those of us that have been doing it for a while, seeing and experiencing the shift, this is one of the things that are the autonomy or the time that you have really isn't there for you to plan necessarily as much.
Yeah, it's been, and I think it can be stressful for those educators that have been around longer. I mean, it's stressful for everybody, but I think it's stressful for educators that have been around longer because it is different, and it's new stuff. Again, I feel like we're going to kind of down the some of the curriculum stuff or whatever, but that has to be more standardized across the board. But I do think like we understand where that comes from, because the reality is there are a ton of people out there teaching. The chances that everybody's getting the same kind of thing, even if they're supposed to have, if you
Yeah.
don't have some kind of standardized curriculum, I mean, what are the chances of that? And so this is like a response ultimately to having to make sure that gaps aren't there and that all the students are getting what they
Yeah.
need
We're using
academically.
data
Yeah.
to inform instruction, to hold people accountable, and making sure kids grow. Our building data has never been better since curriculum initiatives have come through.
Yeah.
And I believe districts and state level data, I mean, I see tons of pros for the curriculum initiatives. And I think just our challenge now that we're going to talk through is, okay, you have some mandates. Then I think we're going to see the same thing that we've seen with reading happen with math across state levels in terms of requirements. And I think it's a good thing. But how do we still think about kids' regulation, outdoor education, critical thinking things? I think that's what we're going to discuss coming up next.
Yeah, it's the unintended consequences, right, of
Yeah.
actions. There's always going to be consequences and fallout from different decisions, and I think that we're finding this is potentially one of them.
Yeah.
All right, so what are the things that cause, or what are some things that potentially cause time poverty? We kind of started talking about it, but what else do you have?
I have the state mandates and that are continuously coming out, I think with good intent, but there's the constant pressure to maintain excellence and time constraints of what is required by law. So you kind of have to do what you have to do before you can do what you want to do.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
just the rules of life. And there are ratings, awards, data checklists more than ever. So we are driven by that, which has its benefits, but also leads to increased pressure. There's not enough paid time for educators to complete the tasks and work they are required to do. And in addition, educators are also parents, spouses, friends, and have daily demands of their life in our current society that can be overwhelming on its own.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I think that we referenced the curriculum stuff, the set amounts of time, that come out, like all the state mandates, that's for sure. I think I even thought about things like having different duty schedules that you have to cover within your school day, within your day. That can contribute as well to kind of having less time to get some of the stuff done. The grading and the planning and all the outside of your scheduled hours, like you referenced, I think that's a big part of it. I think that there's, more and more that keeps getting mandated that we have to do, and not that it's bad, but I think, it's going to be interesting to kind of see how that plays out over time and what adjustments seem to be made. We talk about this a lot, this idea of like a pendulum swinging, right? And I feel like just in the world, I used to say in education, I don't think that's true. I think it's just everywhere. I think we tend to swing like really far one way, then really far the other way, then really far one way again. And we kind of tend to struggle to like find the middle and kind of hang in a sweet spot that's like only so far left or right as far as like a pendulum swinging. And so I just think it's kind of hard to do. So it'll be interesting again to see how far maybe we swing the direction of like not having a lot of personal choice in how you're running your room. It'll be interesting to see where that really lands. All right. So how does time poverty, especially in schools, impact educators, and then students and then families as well?
I was thinking about Dr. Nicholas Long's conflict cycle. So Dr. Lori kind of has redesigned that on her website. If you look at the Revelations of Education, she has a conflict cycle, which is the adults and kids. And when we see dysregulated adults, which comes with pressure and that comes from making sure we squeeze it all in and make it happen right. There's some dysregulation that happens there. It also impacts your kids in your classroom. And so then what we're going to see is constantly rushing, multitasking, not really present for our kids. We increased rates of anxiety, symptoms that appear to be ADHD-like more than ever. We're seeing that in obsessive compulsive disorders for students and to comfort or maintain control for them. So those are we're seeing adult and children conflicts, and then we're also seeing some mental health type things that are happening because we're constantly going, and unfortunately we're robbing our kids from presence and time to be
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I think I hadn't written this down. I was thinking about it while you were talking, though. Like, it's that idea of stuff becoming a checklist, right? We do run the danger of that if you're running a pretty scripted curriculum of any sort. And I know I've heard people, as we've been trained over the years on different curriculums, right? Like, warn us or kind of caution us against this very fact. Like, you don't want it to become what you're doing such a checklist thing that you're just doing stuff just to do it, just to make sure you checked it. Again, I know we reference this a lot. I think I did in the last episode. I do it kind of a lot. A lot of teachers have a similar-ish personality, and we can be checklist kind of people. We can be people that want to make sure we're getting all the things done that we were told we need to get done, so that in our own way we can feel like we accomplished it, and we can give ourselves maybe like the invisible gold star at the end of the day of like, yeah, I got all the things done that I felt like I was supposed to get done. I think we can run the risk of just turning education into like a checklist of things that we got accomplished instead of maybe living in like the reality, the human side of it a little bit more. I think more than anything, too, I think it weighs things down. It's like more of a, I guess, conceptually, metaphorically, kind of weighing things down, and I think it kind of causes educators potentially to also burn out. I mean, I think we talk a lot about behavior doing that as well, but I think it's always coupled, like, right? Like sometimes like tough behavior and working with, students that have a lot of high needs can, that are maybe in our classroom that haven't been in the past. Yeah, that's a part of it. But then I think there's this other part where like as stuff has become more official and mandated and you have to kind of feeling like then all of a sudden you've got a lot of pressure there as well. And I think when you start coupling a lot of stuff together like that, there's just an immense amount of pressure I think that educators can feel, and that's hard, and that's wears on you. And then to your point earlier, you go home and you've got kids potentially, you've got your own responsibilities, you've got family you're taking care of, you've got whatever, you've got all the other things that are normal things, and it can be a lot. And so I think it's important for people to recognize that. I think for our students, they'll feel the effect of this for sure as well. I think a lot of teachers, and I think you kind of reference this too, but when you're feeling rushed to keep going all day long, that can feel overwhelming to the students as well. I think a lot of kids already have their own version of time poverty kind of happening in go lives, outside of school as well. And it also feels that way at school. Or if it does, it can start getting really overwhelming and kind of super stressful. So I think especially about like older students when it comes to this, like high schoolers, maybe more than anybody.
Yeah, I was going to say we see the highest rates of suicide and mental health starting in middle school when we start bombarding our kids with the issue of time poverty. They have an enormous amount of homework. They're in multiple sports and activities, social events, and then you throw in social media in the mix. We've kind of created the perfect storm.
Yeah,
of
like
kids.
There's no rest.
There's no rest, and some families not even embedding it into their family's lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are in multiple sports, running multiple kids around every night, and we're eating in the car on our way between, all the time, right? And I think we're both parents that have very involved kids and things, but so we sympathize with that. But it really made me start thinking about our family structure. Like, you don't have to be in something all the time, one thing at a time. You have to be intentional about this times to anchor back in.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of the idea that just because something's not bad doesn't mean that it's good either, So like, playing baseball and being in the play and, having an after school job and wanting to keep a 4.0 or 4.7. I don't know. They can go so high anymore. It feels like, like none of those things are bad. But that doesn't mean doing all of them is good. And I think that's tough. And I think in a general society where we are pushed to be like, oh, you should achieve and you should be the best and you should whatever. I mean, it can feel, again, especially depending on a kid's personality, it can really feel like, man, what I do now as a sophomore is going to impact the rest of my life. I'm like, I mean, yeah, like I get it can have impact on the rest of your life, but like, like, don't feel all that pressure to be like, what I do right now is like a 15 or 16-year-old is going to dictate the rest of my life goes. And so I think I'm just very aware for like those older students. I think they just got to be there. The time poverty up until that point, I feel like a lot of it is dictated by parents. I feel like it can easily carry over.
Yeah.
So if you're young parents out there or parents to younger kids, like keep that in mind. Like you're setting up like the rhythm of life for what kids are going to feel like is normal when they have their own decisions to make.
Yeah. Could I say
no pressure?
Yeah.
No pressure.
And I would say if you think about personality typing, which I know we talk about a lot, I know I'm the Enneagram 3, which is the achiever. So you look, it is.
Is that what you do?
And so I would tell you if I'm not constantly busy, and this is like, and like I'm really mindful of it now. I have a hard time like having a moment where I don't have anything to do.
Yeah.
What do I do now? And that feels dysregulating because the chaos or the busyness feels my baseline of normal.
Yeah.
So I think really think about, I know both of our kids are very different from one another, but think about your kids too. I have one where I don't think that pressure's good for her. And I have to be mindful that her personality type leans more towards like mine. And I have to be like, it's okay that we're not doing anything right now. Just sit and relax. We're going to be slow and steady. The other one, I'd love for her to have a little more initiative on her, you know. But
what if you got up?
What happens if you did something? But you know, they're just so different. So I think, you know, as we talk through that, just be mindful of personality types and how your kids in your classroom or as a parent thinking about that time poverty and how it impacts just through the individualized person.
Yeah, I think even you talk about that high school idea and how that plays out in personality and whatever. And my personality is not driven in that way.
Yeah.
Like I've got a different kind of personality. And so...
you
but
sure do.
Do I?
You sure do.
Do I really? But I remember I played baseball all through, you know, like all growing up, all through high school. And I remember... I finished obviously my senior year and then I'm in college and I wasn't playing baseball in college. And I remember like actively thinking one day, I was like, I don't know how to feel like if I'm doing well. Like, how do I know if I'm doing well? Like, I can't measure it with like the stats of my game. I can't measure it like on a field, which was crazy. Like I was, you know, good student. I had good things going on, had good friendships. And I was like, this is kind of screwed up that like, I feel like, and I remember just thinking about it as a 19-year-old or whatever. I was like, it's kind of screwed up that I feel like I don't know if I'm doing well at what, like life, because I don't have some way to measure it like on a
and I would say
field.
Go back to your personality type. You're analytical.
Yeah. But then I think, my gosh, like I'm not like overly overwhelmed by stuff like that. I can only imagine like what that's like if you're in that kind of personality and then you're in high school, you're trying to achieve. Anyway, it's just, it's interesting. It's something to, I think, good to be aware of. So yeah, I think the high schoolers, you know, especially have a lot. I think for parents and families, you know, or at least a lot of them who are already dealing, and we talked about this a little bit, you're already dealing with our own versions of time poverty, potentially, whether it's like long work hours, chores, outside obligations, the stuff with kids, all that. I think our younger kids and even the older ones, the idea of how much stress, you know, I think this is good to think through as educators, how much stress is it adding to families when we have a lot of homework. I'm not necessarily saying like any homework is bad all the time. Like I don't want to I try not to make a lot of broad sweeping statements like that, but I do think we should be mindful of like, what are we really doing? You know, like, and what is the purpose? Be mindful of what the purpose and what the reason for things is, not just like, oh, it's just, I assign homework because I assign homework. Just be aware of that and be aware of what that maybe does. I thought one of our teachers, I obviously won't say their name, but they have like a homework style home part to the math program that we were using, and they did a really good job, I thought, of sending a letter home at the beginning of the year saying like, I'll send you like what we're working on, what pages we would be working on. It's okay if I'm never like grading it.
There's an opt out.
Yeah, if it's not the week for it, and that's okay. If it's not the year for it, that's okay. But if you want to do it with your student to like help them have extra practice, that's good too. I thought that was very mindful of that person to do that, and I thought that was a good move.
I agree.
All right, so how do we address time poverty?
Oh, I think it goes back to being intentional, being mindful, just the things that we just talked about, being mindful of your personality type and those things, and how that plays out in the classroom. I I think you have to do some things. You have to be planning ahead. So if you're a day by day person, that's probably your time's probably just living minutes an hour. So
that's a good point.
if you're not a forward thinker or planning, I think that helps a ton. As me as a teacher, I was always like 2 weeks out. 2 weeks out, 2 weeks out. I always had broader like year plans. And then I even do this as a principal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just how my brain operates. I'm always planning the next 2 weeks, the next 2 weeks. So if you're living in the moment of like, I need a schedule for tomorrow, I need to do this, that probably feels very chaotic all the time.
If it's 7:05 and you're like, I need to plan for today.
Yeah.
That's not just
and guess
probably
what?
do some stuff.
Your curriculum initiatives right now will not allow that for happening. You're already having problems. So I would say planning ahead. Start being forward thinking. Work with people. Finding our anchors. So find things that are regulating to you, that calm you down, that help because when you're regulated, your brain is operating better, which means you're going to plan and use your time more efficiently. I see a lot of people that work very hard and waste a lot of time.
Yeah.
Because they're so caught up in the dysregulation or talking about the thing or whatever, that they've lost a lot of time. So they end up working a lot at home, but they spent most of their time just being dysregulated in the moment. Yeah, that's the thing. So think about your anchors. Prioritizing what's the most important thing I need to get done today. I can't do it all, so what's my most important thing?
Yep.
Establishing value in the holistic person. So when we are taking care of our kids holistically in terms of like we're having a hard day. I'm going to go outside and we're going to go outside for 10 minutes and go walk through our meadow or whatever. We come back in. Well, now everyone's time is better efficiently used because they're on task and engaged.
Yeah.
So just because make sure you're using efficient time, intentional time. That's why regulation and getting kids outside and having them engaged in some critical thinking things, if you can weave it in, is intentional time instead of just wasted time where you said, I did it. Yeah. Right? It's again avoiding that checklist. Culture and climate in schools, I think, are more essential now than they ever have been before because we are working on a high pressure time with state mandates. Finding leadership that understands and values teacher regulation is essential for district level administrators to make sure we're hiring the right people that are going to take care of the people.
Yeah.
I think that's super important. Knowing the bigger impacts and outcomes on students and in their learning success. So I think all those things we just talked about are really important to start being really mindful of. It's the type of time we're using where, yes, we only have so much time. How are you using your time? What's intentional? Attention spans are 7 seconds right now.
Yeah.
Probably lost most of people through this podcast. And then
they were out before I got through the
So think about your
intro.
time that you are using and is it intentional? And if we want kids to use their brains, it has to be purposeful and regulated to do that. So
yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think really you covered a lot of it. Prioritizing tasks. And I like that. Set realistic goals. What's like the most important thing? Like I was surprised like how many people can tend to struggle with it. It was a lot of years ago. I was interviewing for a job. And that was one of the questions was like, how do you prioritize when you have a lot of tasks? And I thought it was super interesting because I was like, well, I mean, you just figure out what's the thing that has to be done and what's like the most important thing and whatever. And like their response was people I knew that I was interviewing with. And their response was like, you'd be surprised like how many people can't answer that question at all. And I'm like, what are you, we talked about feeling chaotic, like in a previous episode, talk about feeling chaotic. Like I can't imagine just having like, it's like a hodgepodge of whatever. And you just feel like you have to do it all and it's all equally important. I don't know. Anyway, prioritize tasks and set realistic daily goals. Learn to say no to non-essential commitments. If there's something that I've learned from a lot of different people in education, it's that I don't think it's anybody's fault, but like an organization will always ask more of you.
Yep.
They will always ask more and more and more. And if you feel like you're not a person who can say no very easy, or that if somebody asks you, like you have to come through and do it, or like you kind of get something out of it. Like if somebody asks you to do something, you take on more than what you really can handle, but like you kind of feel like validated in some way, and you end up with way too much on your plate, like that's not great because you're not doing anything well. So be willing to say no to things that are non-essential commitments. I'm not saying you have to say no to everything, but like say no to things. It's okay to say no to things. Use planning tools and kind of calendars and things like that. Organize more efficiently.
Yeah.
Find ways to be efficient about your planning, about whatever. Like figure out what works for you, but find ways to be efficient where you don't have to like reinvent the wheel every single time you're planning the next lesson or whatever it might be. Like find ways. Yeah.
Systems.
Yeah, it's good. And then I think seek peer support or mentoring to share strategies and resources. I think that's always good. Some ideas for administrators. I went around and asked our building what you could be doing. No, I'm just kidding. I do have some
Look at my
ideas.
face of surprise.
I know,
Okay.
and also terrified.
Yeah.
But no, I think anything you can do to kind of, from an administrative perspective, from a school perspective, overall, to like kind of streamline things as well, make things easier to do for your teachers. Like if there's like a certain way that they have to sign in every day and it's just kind of a hassle, like my gosh, I could change that or whatever. Like come up with ways that make fewer like random obligations that your staff have to do all the time. Find ways to, again, streamline things and make things run a little bit more efficiently. I think this is a district by district basis. We understand that what is available and where you're at and money and all the things. But I think providing planning time within a workday is pretty important. Just do what you can to avoid having teachers feel like they've got to do all the planning at home. I think that, a lot of times it's in theory set up that way, but like make sure in practice it works that way. Like, 'cause those are two different things. I think, again, encouraging work-life balance. I think people do that and potentially get upset depending on whether someone really means that or not. But if you're going to encourage that, or you're going to say that, make sure you actually follow through and do that in a way that provides it. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, actually, like, show people that it's okay. Yeah, if you're working nonstop and then you're telling other people that they shouldn't, that what's really the message?
One thing I really try to be mindful of doing, I think I do a pretty good job at it. I don't send any emails after 4:00.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I'll try to check off something on my to-do list that if it's like a reminder or
Yeah.
whatever. But for the most part, there's no emails that are going out from me after 4, and I do that on purpose.
Yeah. I think investing in professional development and in professional development topics that end up ultimately helping teachers streamline things.
Competency.
Yeah. I think the more that you can train people to be better at what they do, then they're going to be better at it and it's going to take less effort and time. We've talked about this before. People can shy away from wanting to train teachers during the year because it can feel like it's adding another thing on. And I get that. I think we both get that. But I think what we can ultimately do is, if you're looking long term, we can actually reduce the amount of time that teachers are needing to spend on things, whether it's academic stuff, a curriculum thing, whether it's behavioral stuff, like whatever it is, like you can reduce the time that teachers are having to spend on it if they are trained well to handle those things easily and well themselves. So just food for thought there. And then I think using technology effectively, hopefully you are figuring out ways to do that. And then overall, and I think, again, just being overall supportive of mental health and well-being. Remember that, yes, if you're an administrator, you're running potentially a whole district. Maybe you're running all of the curriculum. Maybe you're running all of the teachers in your building. Maybe you're running whatever it is you're in charge of. You're in charge of a lot of systems. You're in charge of a kind of a machine working well. I get that. But don't forget like the human side of it, that it's a bunch of just regular people who happen to have jobs that are under you.
Yeah.
Like, remember that. And I think that's a pretty important thing to do.
I was thinking about that saying, you have to spend money to make money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. You got to spend time to make time for people. And I think there's some of...
You're just firing off T-shirt ideas the last couple episodes.
I wish Josh was here to
know.
write them down.
I know. Maybe next time.
I do think that there's a lot of avoidance. We think we're doing favors by canceling staff meetings, not hosting special education planning time or gifted planning time. But what we're doing is having people work really hard because we haven't talked out the systems or routines or like develop long-term goal planning. When we cancel those things, we're telling people living day by day is okay because there's a power. And so you have to spend the time to collaborate and plan and build systems around what you're doing with the team and people so that you're not wasting a lot of side conversations and time later on because we've already talked and did it together very succinctly and officially. So the 6 hours I would have in hallway conversations or catching up and make sure I tell this person too and fill everybody in and do all this stuff, you could have really just had an hour meeting together, or it's more efficiency. So you gotta spend the time to be able to give people time back.
I mean, it's really the exact same thing we say about classroom management, classroom regulation, whatever, at the beginning of a year, right?
Yeah.
Like if you spend the time on the front end, it actually provides you way more time throughout the year to handle that. And I think you have to think about the marathonness of somebody's career. I mean, you potentially can set somebody up in their first 5 years to have so much more time over the next 25, 30 years if you take the time to really train people well and give them some of those opportunities. It's an interesting thought, and I think that, yeah, I know you actually got going on it less than I thought you would. There was a moment where I was like, "Oh man, this is gonna be a while now," because she started going. Yeah,
she's on the soapbox. Go ahead.
No, but I do think it's important, and so I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. All right, what do you want people to walk away from this episode knowing?
Dysregulated adults create dysregulated kids. That's just how the science works, and contribute to poor culture and climate. If we know that for sure, then how are we supporting people with giving them time back? Encourage people to look at things like wasted time, like can we look at duty schedules and consolidating some meetings and being efficient and think of ways we're communicating with each other better. Shared leadership, time-saving technology, and boundaries all can help us. And leading and giving permission for the things that research is telling us that can help us, outdoors, connection, and steadiness should be prioritized time use.
Yeah. I think for me, I was just telling somebody, again, which kind of seems to be a thing that I'm on this year maybe, that it's okay to go slower on some days, to actually have the stamina and internal bandwidth to go faster later.
I think that is a t-shirt. Go slow to go fast, right?
Yeah, I didn't make that one up, though. I think that's probably somebody already trademarked that. Yeah. I think it's hard for a lot of teachers to do that, though, because a lot of teachers, again, are people who want to do stuff the right way. And maybe be by the book a little bit. Mm-hmm. Just give yourself the permission to do what you need to do, though, and to maybe slow it down a little bit. Really, same concept we were just talking about. If we slow down and maybe don't check everything off the list, but we really help the students understand how it's going to be working in this curriculum moving forward, or that they really understand this concept before we move forward, at times, that can certainly set us up to actually move a lot quicker for the next 3 months than it would if we just kind of kept going. So just be aware of that. I think that's an important thing to be okay. Be okay to give yourself permission to go slow. And again, I feel like I always have to say this. If it's like you're on week 2 of being like, well, we're just taking a slow day. Like, I mean, don't do that. I don't think most people do that, but like, don't be that person either. We're like, well, I feel like we just need another slow day. Like, well, you also have to do stuff and do it well.
There's professional responsibility and ethics, and you have an obligation.
Don't hear that I'm saying that.
You have an obligation to follow through on your district expectations and go through curriculum. And what I think you're suggesting is really thinking about if we're going to consolidate and stay on pace, right? I know a big goal of ours is like pacing the share. Like, so you're going to consolidate, you're going to talk to people, you're going to make professional best decision making. You're also not going to shove a bunch of stuff down people's throats and say, let's go. I gave it to you. Yeah. You didn't learn anything, but I gave it to you. Yeah.
You're not going to walk away. You shouldn't have like kids or you walking away from
crying.
Crying. That's what I was going to say. Just being like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So just be aware of that. Hey, as always, we really appreciate you joining us in the conversation. Hopefully you found this helpful. Hopefully maybe you learned something. Maybe you didn't know about the concept of time poverty. We just learned about it recently as well. And I think that could be an interesting thing for you to look into more. Maybe it's a good thing for you to share with somebody who you see is kind of struggling and is clearly time poor right now that you're working with. Maybe you're time poor and you're like, man, I need to actually talk to my administrator and be like, hey, listen, like I just listened to this podcast, didn't know about this concept. I'm really feeling this way. Could you help me out by listening to this podcast? And also then talking about it with me afterwards, but share it with somebody. Hopefully you found it helpful. As always, let's go out there and do the work.
Let's go do it.